Hey, shalom, 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 makam, which is peace unto you all. Hi, Rob Tawab La Atam Zach Yakam Yawaman Rachador Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawan from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam Kaya Malakata Shamayim Kwara. Repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call Halayim La La Banawa Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rocha Godash Wamashanal Azakwanim Na Wamalakim Sharochagadar, which is all praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham in the name Yahweh Shai delivers in double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Zaya Ramya, this is Jeremiah chapter 14 and verse 13, in which the subtitle it reads, it says, false prophets, which in Hebrew that would be Nabayayam, Nabayayam Shakwaryam, Nabayayam Shakwaryam, which is Nabayayam is the prophets, all right, and then Shakwaryam is false, in which the Yam at the end of Shakwar essentially goes into making it plural. But verse 13 it says, then said I, Lord, power, behold, the prophets say unto them, ye shall not see the sword, neither shall ye have famine, but I will give you assured peace in this place. Let's get this in the NLT. And it says, then said, O sovereign Lord, their prophets are telling them, all is well, no war or famine will come, the Lord will surely send you peace. All right, and amongst those of the circumcision, you have false prophets saying this, you see, but then, all right, those amongst those that are not amongst the circumcision, all right, which represents, so-called Christian pastors, all right, different leaders of 2/3 Jake, essentially, they have ascribed or taking the scriptures upon themselves, all right, and saying that the Lord sent them when the Lord didn't truly send them, all right, because those that the Lord truly sent, they will be bringing forth the correct message. All right, verse 14 it says, then the Lord said unto me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I sent them not, neither have I commanded them, neither spake unto them. They prophesy unto you a false vision and divination, and a thing of naught, and a deceit of their heart. So ultimately, these messages and things that they having in their minds are essentially these messages are not from the Lord Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. They're ultimately imaginations. All right, they're ultimately vain visions. All right, so let's get a couple more. Just wanted to go into the topic of the false prophets. All right, so this is Matthew chapter 24. We'll get verse 11. It says, and many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. In which you had false prophets, in the ancient world, you see, and you got them today. All right, in which, the false prophets nowadays, all right, are coming by way of what they call influencers, or these content creators. All right, everybody's a prophet, on social media nowadays, but more specifically more specifically, those amongst the circumcision. All right, and then you got those that are outside of the circumcision, but then again, given a common day example as to false prophets are rising. All right, because what we see on social media, all over YouTube and things of that nature, everybody's picking up the scriptures and they're trying to read off what's going on, you see, but they ultimately don't have the understanding to break down the scriptures. Only the men of the Lord have the understanding to break down the scriptures. All right, but just going back to the point that many false prophets are rising currently. All right, so let's also get this. Let's get Luke. We'll get Luke chapter 6, and we'll get verse 26. And it says, woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. All right, let's get this in the NLT. And it says, what sorrow awaits you who are praised by the crowds, for their ancestors also praised false prophets. All right, let's go back to the NLT, and it says, woe unto you, which woe means misery or destruction. Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you. All right, because when men are well spoken of, essentially that's talking about amongst the world, that worldly type of spirit. But it says, woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. So that's essentially the same spirit, that was in the ancient world. They wanted to be essentially be seen of men, and they wanted the praise of men. So um, if everyone is speaking well of you, all right, essentially that would show that you're not in the correct spirit. And that's essentially the spirit that again these false prophets is coming in. So let's also get this. Let's get Jeremiah. Let's get Jeremiah chapter 23. Jeremiah 23 and verse 1. And it says, "Woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, saith the Lord." Because a pastor is supposed to be there to take care of the sheep. All right, which the Lord likened the nation of Yasharallah unto sheep. All right. It says, "Woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, saith the Lord." All right, destruction to the false prophets. Verse 2, it says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, power of Israel, against the pastors that feed my people. Ye have scattered my flock." The true job of a pastor, all right, ultimately is to gather the flock, not scatter. It says, "Ye have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them." All right, and ultimately, uh, in the visitation of sheep, all right, when a true shepherd or a true pastor, visits the sheep, they gonna make sure, hey, they fed, hey, you good, they essentially, they gonna make sure they're groomed up and make sure that they're being taken care of. You see, but it says, and have not visited have not visited them. All right, they haven't essentially given them what they needed to live, which is this truth. It says, "Behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doing, saith the Lord." All right, in which those that essentially was in that the stead of scattering and not gathering, hey, the Lord's going to visit them. All right, they're going to be judged. They're going to be destroyed. All right, because they didn't want to be in the right spirit and essentially break down these scriptures in sincerity and in truth. They was in the spirit of doing it for vain glory. Preaching for strife and contention. All right. So let's also get this. We'll get Ezekiel chapter 13. We'll get verse 1. It says, in which the subtitle says, "False prophets condemned." And it says, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel that prophesy, and say thou unto them that prophesy out of their own hearts, Hear ye the word of the Lord." And ultimately, their vision, all right, is coming from their own hearts. These are the things that they want to see happen. Verse 3 says, "Thus saith the Lord, power, woe unto the foolish prophets that follow their own spirit and have seen nothing." They haven't seen anything. All right, they haven't received of any revelations. All right, again, these are their own thoughts and vain opinions. All right, verse 4 says, "O Yashar Allah, thy prophets are like the foxes in the deserts." All right, and then foxes in deserts. A fox is a very sly and cunning animal. So it's a picture being made here. It's a similitude being made here. The false prophets, is like foxes. They're very slick. They're very sly. They're very crafty. They understand. That Jake, needs to be visited. You see, so what do they visit them with? All right, they give them, a little sprinkle of the truth here or there. All right, but then the rest of the spots that is not true nourishment, they're putting the gimmicks in there. You see, so that's the trickiness and the craftiness and the subtleness, that the false prophets are essentially coming with, and that's essentially why the Lord, all right, is going to destroy them. All right, those that are in that spirit and don't repent. All right, that's why it says in verse 8, it says, I'm gonna read down. It says, "Ye have not gone up into the gaps, neither made up the hedge for the house of Israel, to stand in the day to stand in the battle in the day of the Lord." Hey, as it says in the New Testament, it talks about how shall I'm gonna get that real fast. All right, I believe it's might be 2 Corinthians 8. First Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 7. It says, "And even things without life-giving sound, whether pipe or harp, except they give a distinction in the sounds, how shall it be known what is piped or harped? It says, "For if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to the battle?" Nobody's gonna prepare themselves to the battle. Because you got certain tunes and stuff like that. With the with the trumpet. All right, so you got a trumpet for the feast days. All right, or you got the horn for the feast days, or you got a horn for battle. All right, so if we're going out into battle, essentially the battle horn would have to be blowing. All right, so if the horn for all right getting married and false divinations, or excuse me, if the horn for getting married and the horn for peace, all right, and the different captivities that Jake has scattered in is being blown, that's what Jake is essentially going to have on their mind is that peace, all right, and getting married and partying and bullshitting. All right, which essentially those represent those false divinations that's being pumped out, all right, by these false prophets. All right, let's go back to Ezekiel chapter 13. We'll get we were at verse 4, verse 5, verse 6, excuse me. It says, "They have seen vanity and lying divination, saith the Lord." Excuse me, saying, "The Lord saith, and the Lord hath not sent them. And they have made others to hope that they would confirm the word. Have ye not seen a vain vision? And have ye not spoken a lying divination? Whereas ye say, the Lord saith it, albeit I have not spoken." The Lord didn't, give them these words. These words are, they brought those words upon them their own selves. All right. Verse 8 says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord power, because ye have spoken vanity and seen lies. Therefore, behold, I am against you, saith the Lord power." The Lord is against the false prophets, because they're essentially, pushing forth a vision of their own mind, and essentially it's not going to come to fruition. All right. So I'm gonna read down, and that'll be it. But this is Ezekiel chapter 13 and verse 9. It says, "And mine hand shall be upon the prophets that see vanity, and that divine lies. They shall not be in the assembly of my people, neither shall they be written in the writing of the house of Yasharallah, neither shall they enter into the land of Israel. And ye shall know that I am the Lord power. Because they have seduced my people, saying peace, and there was no peace." It's no peace, in these times. All right. The peace is going to be in the kingdom. We got to go through, we have to go through straits. All right. It says, "And one built up a wall, and lo, others daubed it with untempered mortar. Say unto them which daub it with untempered mortar, that it shall fall. There shall be an overflowing shower, and yea, O great hailstones shall fall, and a stormy wind shall rend it. It says, Lo, when this wall is fallen, shall it not be said unto you, where is the daubing wherewith ye have daubed it?" So essentially, they built up, a false sense of shelter. All right, they built up a false sense of covering. You see, so when the different adversities come down, all right, when that structure is tested, it's gonna fall. All right, verse 12, it says, "Lo, when the wall is fallen, shall it not be said unto you, where is the daubing wherewith ye have daubed it? Therefore, thus saith the Lord power, I will even rend it with a stormy wind in my fury, and there shall be a overflowing shower in mine anger." It says, "And great hailstones in my fury to consume it. So I will break down the wall that ye have daubed it with untempered mortar, and bring it down to the ground, so that the foundation thereof shall be discovered, and it shall fall, and ye shall be consumed in the midst thereof, and ye shall know that I am the Lord." So essentially, it says, "So the foundation thereof shall be discovered." Let's get this in the NLT. And it says, "I will break down your wall right to its foundation, and when it falls, it will crush you. Then you will know that I am the Lord." So essentially, that untempered mortar, represents, or excuse me, it says, that untempered mortar is likened unto whitewash. That essentially represents, what they have built their ideologies upon. You see, so when it comes time for things like such as the chip, all right, things such as the charagma, they have a little bit of sprinkle truth here or there. You see, but when the rubber really meets the road, all right, and their congregations have questions, the essentially that wall that they have built is it's not going to hold under the pressure. You see, because those with the correct doctrine, all right, which represent, the men of great millstone from the apostles and elders on down, and those likewise doctrine. Essentially, scriptures is a similar to, it's a liking unto Yahweh Shai, and Yahweh Shai is likened unto that rock. You see, so it's a sure foundation. That's what our scriptures say. We have a more sure word of prophecy, because essentially what we're speaking is the words from the Lord. All right, and what we're saying is right out of the scriptures. Whereas, with the false prophets, they don't have a sure word of prophecy, because they're mixing it in with gimmicks. You see, so essentially when it comes time to i.e. when the Karagma is dropped, their congregation's gonna have a lot of questions. All right, and essentially, those that don't repent from that spirit, they're gonna be destroyed. So just wanted to go into that, because the false prophets will be destroyed. So I don't want to Zaza by Naya Paulos, where there was a beautiful edification through the spirit. Why I don't want to Zaza Tham Yashlay La Tawa. Lord's will, you all have a good night. Wa Shalom Lakam, with just peace unto you all. Shalom, shalom.